It can only be attributable to human error.
You're entering parallel.
He meddled in things that you keep before. He meddled in things. He meddled in things.
Where will we go next? Just a phantom from another time.
No one, Mr. Mulder.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
That is one big pile of shit.
Hello, I'm Alex Kaiju,
I'm Jasmine with
I'm Eli Watson.
and today you're listening to
Cryptid.
Campfire.
Woo! Brought to you by the amazing generative powers of AI.
Yeah, I don't know. Zoom's got some weird AI warnings now every time we record a meeting, so who knows what's gonna happen with that.
Oh yeah.
We're
watching-
digitizing your brains so you can do cryptic campfire for 1,000 years as robots.
Dude, we'll be watching TV in the future and we'll hear our voices and they'll just be talking about random products and stuff like that. Be like, oh, you guys should use Zoom to do your meetings, and it'll be Jasmine's voice, and I'll be like, what? When did you do that, Jasmine? Never. Oh.
Run me my check.
Yeah, right.
So we may be a campfire, but today we're talking about something on ice.
Wow, that was clever.
Thank you.
Cryptid campfire on ice?
We're starting with a cold opening today.
Whoa, guys. This is getting crazy. I came with 0 puns.
Feeling left out in the cold, are ya?
Dang.
Dang. You guys need to chill out on the ice puns.
Well, I mean, I feel like we all need to chill out because this story is whack. This story is so whack, guys. I don't even know how we're gonna talk about this. I'm so excited.
I'm excited too. Actually, the Minnesota Iceman is one story that I've wanted to talk about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And with the resurrection of the campfire,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is the time. We'll finally discuss this.
Yeah, because you had a book for it that you hadn't read, right?
Yes, I bought this book. It's called Neanderthal, The Strange Story of the Minnesota Iceman. I don't know why I held it up. It's not like anyone's watching the video because there
Just
is
visualize it in the audience. Just imagine Eli had a mustache and he held up a big book that said Neanderthals. Iceman, what's cool, what's not.
Yeah. So the strange saga of the Minnesota Iceman was written by Bernard Heuvelmans, aka the father of cryptozoology, aka the homie G,
AKA the Hoover.
Yeah. There's a picture of him. My favorite picture of Heuvelmans has him examining this like super old encyclopedia of animals, and he's got his shirt off. And I sent that to Carrick St. Laurent, who's been on the podcast before, and I believe he dubbed him Playboy Heuvelmans. And that's what I think of him now. It's like, reading this book, his character does not seem anything like a player. So this guy's too much of a nerd.
He was always bare-chested, shirt off when he was going into every adventure.
Although there are shirtless pics of him in Central America in this book, so maybe he was that dude running around.
There's always the one guy who takes his shirt off at sporting events.
Heuvelmans. Interestingly enough, I also have that book because I'm trying to stick to my habit of reading at least one book per episode. I think I've done it for every episode. Well, the first episode that we did this season, I didn't read an entire book. I bought a book and I read one section out of it. And then I read Aaron's book.
Yeah.
And then I read a book about the Grafton Monster. And now I've read this book. This is our 4th episode, right? For this year? I'm not forgetting anything.
Yeah, no, you're correct.
Yeah,
It's
and
24 episodes.
So yeah, now I've read this book. I ordered it off of Amazon and I read it during the wild Los Angeles hurricane that we experienced. And by wild, I mean Luckily, it wasn't that bad for us here in LA. It was just a lot of rain. There weren't even any high winds, no thunder. We did have a mini earthquake. That was interesting. But I spent that weekend cuddled up in a living room with some puppies by a screen door, listening to the rain and reading about the Minnesota Iceman.
Sick.
So where do we start? Where do we start with this story? How do we want to dive into this conversation? You know what? I'm kind of interested. So obviously Eli and I have read this book. Alex, where did you go for information?
Well, let's clarify. The fact that we read the book doesn't necessarily mean our information is more accurate than Alex.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Everybody in the field has different opinions about this case, and we just happened to read one opinion. One opinion that I think is one of the most important opinions because he was one of the people who saw the thing in person, but, you know, he's just one guy. What does everyone else think? We'll find out.
Yeah, it's funny to think because Eli, Jasmine, they sat down, they wrote a book by the grandfather of cryptozoology, Mr. Bernard Heuvelmans, the shirtless man out there looking for Bigfoot, looking for the Loch Ness Monster, looking at the Iceman. He wrote his own book of memoirs, stories. And that's just one view. So I said, let me go to the other great source, Cryptid Wikis with a Z.
Did
See what they
you?
had to
I
say.
want to know what they said.
I tried to look them up. They didn't really have an article as well.
All right.
I don't know if whoever was running the Cryptid Wikis has gone away, found a new pursuit, but there's not as many articles for the monsters we've been covering this season. So I went to the next best person that I could find, Carrick St. Laurent.
Hey, let's go!
Carrick, good friend of the podcast, has his own YouTube channel, Crash Course Cryptozoology.
Yes.
And had a nice, tight 18-minute documentary about the Iceman. So I watched that, got a little bit of info from that. Then I did just random searches online, found a few websites just to look up some random facts that were interested as the story went along. But a lot of my source I got from Carrick.
Oh, nice.
He's very concise, very good points, and a good speaker too, I have to say.
Yes. I actually have a suggestion. We should start off with what it was for people who don't know. What is the Minnesota Iceman?
Okay, well, that's going to be a very broad explanation because what it was is debated. But
Well, in general,
yeah,
it was
what the thing was.
First of all, it wasn't called the Iceman.
No, it was called a couple different things throughout
Well,
its travels.
Yeah, because we all know it as the Minnesota Iceman, but that's not what it was called when it was traveling around this. I get with a couple different states across the country.
Yeah, I think for 18 months total is the tour that it went on around to different carnivals and fairs as part of like a sideshow exhibit. Just a strange phenomenon that was toured around the US for people to come see.
Yes. So it was in a trailer. So you would see a sign that said, preserved in ice for centuries, perhaps a medieval man rescued from the Ice Age. And you would pay 35 cents. You'd go into the room, and they would have a freezer in the room with a glass pane that let you look at this ice block. And inside the ice block was a hairy man.
Mm-hmm.
Very hairy.
Maybe 6 feet tall. His left arm was raised up over its head, his right arm laying on his belly, and he had a bullet hole in his head.
Yeah, it was friggin' gnarly.
Eyeballs hanging out of his socket.
We mentioned Bernard Heuvelmans. He wrote the book about it, but I watched that documentary that Carrick did, and I think it's the first time I've ever seen footage of Heuvelmans talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool because he's kind of a soft-spoken man. I was there examining this hairy man in ice, his arm raised, fingers, a bullet hole in what appeared to be his head, one eyeball completely gone, the other one sunk out of its socket, floating there, blood everywhere, and he just goes on to describe like a murder scene.
It's true, yeah. But here's my thing with that. So there are photos, and you can look these photos up online. We're not a video podcast anymore, so unfortunately, we're not going to be able to show you that. But you can find the photos online that Heuvelmans actually ended up taking when he went to examine the creature. My problem is I don't see the blood. I don't see the eyeballs. I don't
The floating
see
eyeball that's hanging out of the socket.
I'm like, where's it at? Everybody talks about how bloody it was and how there were brains oozing out of the back of his head. And I'm like, where? Show me
Jasmine
where.
wants to see the gore.
I do.
I guess we could throw this at the top. The story takes place in the distant, mystical year of 1968.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You see this thing at the carnival, 35 cents to see a weird old frozen dead body. And due to inflation, from 1968 to today, 2023, that would have been $3 back then.
Oh, wow. That's a fun fact. I didn't even think to
Yeah.
calculate that.
I was curious.
I'd pay that much.
Yeah, if $3 you want to see a dead frozen hairy guy,
I'd
Dude,
be kind of
that's-
scared.
That's
here's
also,
$4,
like, nothing. That's nothing.
right? Like,
Would easily charge at least 20-25 right now.
well, what's funny too is so it's 35 cents for the general public, but apparently the man who owns the body, quote unquote, owns, as we'll get into, Frank DeHansen, he would charge 3 cents if you're a scientist, so you could examine the body.
Mm-hmm.
So he gave the scientific community a discount.
Or if you were super popular in the scientific community, you got to see it for free, because that's exactly what happened with Ivan T. Sanderson and Bernard Heuvelmans.
Which the boy Ivan Sanderson's back.
Yeah.
How many
He's
times
returned.
have we talked about him since the return? Like 0 times.
Yeah.
And now it's the double team, double fury of Heuvelmans and Sanderson together.
Mm.
Dude, this
The
is
mega powers.
This is the most ambitious cinematic crossover since Endgame. Or since Infinity War, sorry.
Yeah.
You know, we got Sanderson and Heuvelmans, same place at the same time.
Yeah, and I wonder if they would have ended up going together had they not already been hanging out, because it was the two of them. They were in New Jersey together in December of 1968. They were just hanging out. They were chilling. They were preparing for some work, and yeah.
Yeah, Heuvelmans was getting ready to go to Central America, and he was in the States because he was French. He lived in France.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually Belgium, I think, is more correct. Either way, he was in the States promoting the release of his book In the Wake of Sea Serpents, of which I have a first edition English version of. I'm pretty stoked about that. And so he's hanging out with the boy Sanderson. They're just chilling.
Probably shirtless together too, you think?
Probably shirtless. You know? And Sanderson gets a call from this herpetologist named Terry Cullen.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "Hey, Sanderson, man, is this your phone number?" And he proceeds to tell Sanderson that he's a fan,
Mm-hmm.
that he's interested in the Abominable Snowman and stuff, because Sanderson had published his book, Abominable Snowman, Legend Come to Life, of which I also have a first edition of.
Oh,
Ooh, ooh, oh yeah. Call me the collector.
collecting those dead trees.
Yeah. It's cool though. Anyways, his purpose for calling was to tell Sanderson about a strange specimen that he had seen at the Wisconsin State Fair the year prior, I think in August 1967. And it was the Minnesota Iceman exhibit. And so it took Sanderson like a few days, but he found out the name of the guy who owned it, which was Frank D. Hansen. I just want to get that out for the audience. I think Alex is going to continue to say DeHansen.
Frank DeHansen.
But it's just Hansen.
He would later go on to father 3 boys who would form a band called Hanson.
He was a father, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
This is when my knowledge of Sanderson's going to come in handy. Basically, he asked Hansen if he could come out and visit him and examine the body, but not for scientific reasons. He didn't want to scare him off with that. So he said it was like basically alluding to Sanderson's previous history of owning a zoo, in which he did in New Jersey. Sanderson owned a 200-acre farm in which he stored exotic animals that he owned. And then I
That's
think
cool.
he called it Ivan Sanderson's Jungle Zoo and Laboratory.
Ooh.
And it came to an end in the early 1950s when his barn caught on fire and it killed 45 of the animals, and then the whole place flooded the same week because of a hurricane.
Wow.
No.
Yeah, and that was the end of Ivan Sanderson's Jungle Zoo and Laboratory. But that's essentially what he was alluding to, was like some sort of deal where Sanderson was quite theatrical. Everything was Ivan Sanderson. Like, I have one of his books called Ivan Sanderson's Book of Jungles. He was heavily invested in the personal brand thing before. I mean, he would have been an Instagram influencer today.
Mhm.
Hey, it's your boy Anderson here.
Yeah.
Here with my shirtless friend Heuvelmans, the Hoover.
Could you imagine? Oh my. Disgusting.
And
Imagine.
doing like stupid TikTok games and like little things. They'd be like the Da Vinci of the cryptozoology world.
Anyways, Hansen agreed. And so Sanderson was like, yo, Hoovy Hoov, you want to come? Hoovel Hooves, let's
Ripped his shirt off, said, I'm ready, let's go.
let's drive to Minnesota. And so they did.
I mean, I can't imagine what a road trip between the two of them would be like, all the way from New Jersey to Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, goodness. Could you imagine? Because Heuvelman's writing style and Sanderson's writing style couldn't be more different from each other. So Heuvelmans would be in there talking about vampire bats and how they have anticoagulants so people can't stop the bleeding from a wound. And then Sanderson would be like, yeah, and they look like Dracula and they're demons of the night.
Oh, man. Yeah, that would have been great. Be like the next beat generation of poets traveling the road together.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, they get to Minnesota. They arrived on December 16th. Again, the year is 1968. And the next day is when they go to the ranch/farm of Frank D. Hansen. So Tuesday the 17th. Background info about Hansen. He's actually a retired career soldier. So former pilot who had left the U.S. Air Force in 1965 with the rank of captain after 20 years of active service. And he told Sanderson and Heuvelmans that he had shown the specimen at numerous fairs since the previous year, starting in May, and that he'd bought it in Hong Kong. So first of all, when Terry Cullen called Sanderson, Cullen said that it was found in...
Off the coast of Kamchatka.
Yes,
Bering
that
Sea.
one. The Bering Sea. And that it had been fished out by... Was this the trawlers
The
then?
Soviet trawler.
Yeah, the
In
Soviet
which-
trawlers.
They were forced to pour it at a Chinese port, and the Chinese authorities confiscated it.
Mm-hmm. So that's what Cullen told Sanderson. So when Sanderson and Heuvelmans get to Hansen, Hansen then says the iceblock had actually been fished up by Japanese whalers who had sold it to a Hong Kong merchant whom he bought it from.
So we're already at two different origin stories.
But then the very next day, Hansen's like, oh, actually, I didn't buy it. I got the money from this California mogul from the film industry who's actually the real owner. He spotted it on a trip to the Orient where he was researching accessories and decorative elements. So this guy gave me the money and now he's the actual owner, but I'm kind of like making the profits and taking it around town so that we can make money off it. So 3 origin stories now.
Did you hear the rumor of who the millionaire, the California media mogul was?
I heard a couple, but I know what you're going to say, and I'm so excited.
The one, the only, Jimmy Stewart. Rumored to be the real owner of the Iceman. He's back, baby.
Stewart.
Had I known that Jimmy Stewart played such a pivotal role in so many cryptozoological stories.
Dude, yeah, he helped steal the hand. No, not even the hand. He helped steal the finger and decided that wasn't enough. He needed a whole body.
Mary, I gotta get a real one now.
Yeah, and then he decided, you know what? I can't be seen holding on to this. I need to give it to some random dude in Minnesota
Yeah.
to display around the country at carnivals.
Mm-hmm.
As for the mystery mogul, John Napier, who we'll get to in a little bit, refers to him as Mr. X, and I thought that was a cool nickname.
Okay.
So that's what I'm gonna call him,
Mr.
you
X.
know.
All right.
But we could also call him, the fake Jimmy Stewart if you want.
Pimmy Stewart.
Fakey Stewart.
It's funny too. Mr. X is the name. There's an episode of The Simpsons where Homer starts a tell-all expose magazine, and he's Mr. X. But when you go onto his website, it's a picture of him, and then a bag goes on his head that says Mr. X to keep his secret identity.
So we'll find throughout this story that Hansen really seesaws back and forth about how he feels about this whole situation. Because at first, yeah, he invited Sanderson out. Heuvelmans came with him. He's like, yeah, come take a look. Of course, curiosity strikes Heuvelmans and Sanderson, so they start asking a bunch of questions. They want to know where it came from. What's the origin story? Where'd you get this? Blah, 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 blah. And they're really wanting the opportunity for this specimen to be examined because they're obviously taken aback by how authentic it seems. But Hansen immediately is like, nah, we don't need any publicity about this. It doesn't need scientifically examined. It could even be fake. This could be a hoax. This could be a rubber dummy sitting in the sarcophagus. I don't even know. And here's the thing. I don't want to know because that makes it easier to sell the mystery.
Not only that, I do want to bring this up real quick. Before they got to see the body, Hansen made Sanderson promise not to publish anything about it publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Heuvelmans is very adamant that he did not make that same promise.
Yeah, I didn't sign the NDA.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, he did not. Honestly, it's funny. Heuvelmans is very, very combative in this book.
Dude. I just want to say I had a lot of fun reading this book. So for anybody who's listening to our podcast, because we like to say that we serve as an entry point for cryptozoology, like people who've never heard about these things, hear about them for the first time from us. And I want to read a line from I think it's the intro of this book, just so you have an idea of what's ahead. So from the intro, here's a one-sentence summary about what this story is going to be. An inquiry into the origin of the specimen triggers a bizarre adventure involving the mafia, the Vietnam War, drug smuggling, giving much of the account the flavor of a detective story. And I want to say that that's true, because I got this book and I started reading it, and a few chapters in, it really starts to get crazy, and I feel like I'm reading a fiction novel, but it's so exciting, and because sometimes when I read a book for research purposes, I start to get sleepy. I got to kind of force myself to keep reading, get that info, take those notes. But this one, I was flipping through the pages like, what? What's coming next? What's happening now? Because it is so crazy.
It's like reading a Dan Brown novel.
Yeah. But I think the reason I said all that is because Hansen claims that he wants everything about the specimen to remain a mystery because that makes it more exciting. That makes it easier to sell. And guys, it's still a mystery because there is a lot that's still undetermined. But yeah, Heuvelmans did not sign an NDA. Sanderson agreed that he wouldn't publish anything about it. And so they go into the trailer where this cold sarcophagus is, and there's lights mounted on the interior so that you could see the specimen through the glass panes. Now, this book offers an extended description of what this specimen looks like. I'm obviously not going to read the multiple pages giving, I don't even know, measurements and descriptors about every aspect of the specimen's body. But there is one paragraph that I feel like sums everything up pretty well. And if there are other details specifically that we would like to get into about the appearance of the specimen, we definitely can. He writes, oh, and another quick fact. So this book was actually written in French, obviously, because Heuvelmans himself was French. This English translation came out in 2016. It was translated by Paul LeBlanc. So That's how we know what this book says. Well, you just had a revelation.
Yeah, that shifts the timeline. That's so recent in terms of how long this story has been around.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder people get the details wrong all the
Mhm.
time.
So
'Cause
yeah.
First of all, no one reads cryptozoology books. And second of all, this book hasn't even been around for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no one reads cryptozoology books, let alone ones that are French.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the original book was in 1974. So I wanted to say that because when I read these quotes are coming from an English translation of a French book. So, anyways, the paragraph. It was undoubtedly a man, tall and well-muscled, a little over nearly 6 feet tall. A man who at first glance appeared to have the same proportions as you and I, but a man as hairy as a gorilla or chimpanzee. He was lying flat on his back, his head tilted back, his left arm raised over his head, his right hand seeming to protect his lower belly in the familiar pose of a sleeping man. However, he was definitely not sleeping and undoubtedly dead. His head was stained with blood and his eye sockets were empty and bloody. His left arm was strangely curved like that of a rag doll. Actually, it was certainly broken because halfway between the wrist and the elbow, the ulna was sticking out of an open wound. His right foot, bent upwards while the knee was also bent, seemed in an abnormal position, resulting from a muscular spasm, a disability, or a wound. This mutilated corpse was embedded in an icy shroud. In general, the specimen was easily visible, and numerous small details could be seen through the ice, in some places crystal clear. Would we like to elaborate on any other details about the specimen? I'm sure we will when we get to kind of like talking about what Heuvelmans determined it was based on comparisons of other things. Maybe? I don't know.
Sure.
But that's just a general overlook.
Yeah, it's like an awkwardly shaped dead hairy man, broken arm, blown out face.
Yeah.
Yeah, very large face. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of little details that I thought were interesting, but for the sake of this podcast, I won't get into that.
Well, there's one detail that's super, super important about everything.
The nose?
The nose comes into the thing that I was talking about when you're like trying to identify what it is.
Well, I'm going to say it now. The nose, it sticks up, and how does he say?
Upturned and facing forward, the nostrils are.
Nose is extremely wide and highly upturned, making the nostrils stick straight out. The ridge of the nose is nearly horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and all of those features play into what Heuvelmans decided to categorize this specimen as, which we'll get to a little bit later. But one of the most important details about when they first saw this specimen is there was a stank coming from it.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I'm surprised you didn't come across this because this is always told wrong on the internet. Well, from what I've been able to find online and what I've always read and what I've always believed is that Sanderson leaned onto the glass and cracked it, and then they got that smell coming from the ice. But that is not true. The smell was there before the glass cracked, and the glass cracked not because anyone was leaning on it, but because the lamp above had caused so much heat that the glass cracked.
Like defrosting the thing, huh?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh,
I didn't even know there ever was a glass cracking or a light falling because the book says, the book says on page 11 that the seals in the lower corner closest to the left foot emanated a nauseating smell of rotting corpse. And I don't know. You tell me where the cracked glass comes in.
It's right after that. Hold on.
All right.
Let's see.
While you look for that, I'll just mention. So they noticed this smell, which for them was a big point of proof that this was a real biological specimen. Eli's looking at me like, it's on page. Tell me what page it's on.
Page 12.
Page 12?
Let me read it.
All right, read it.
A revealing incident occurred during my photography session. At one point, while the high-powered lamp was just above the glass cover of the coffin, there was a sharp cracking sound. The heat from the lamp had cracked the glass. Good Lord, shouted Hansen. How will I be able to explain that? Hansen suddenly looked annoyed and worried, and his reaction had been too rapid and spontaneous to be feigned.
Yeah, and he had similar reactions to when they reported the nauseating smell, because he was like, no, that's impossible. That can't be true. What are you talking about? And then when he walked over to that corner and was able to smell it himself, he was upset.
It's like, whoo.
Whoa, this thing needs to get up and wash its butt.
And this becomes a point of conversation because, or not even conversation, but debate, because if it was fake, if it was rubber, it wouldn't be stankin'. So
there is a rebuttal to that. There is a rebuttal.
All right. Do you want to share the rebuttal?
Kind of gets
or
in
later.
Well, no, I'll share it.
All right.
Because this comes from someone who's been on the podcast before. It's Doug Hychek.
Oh, yes.
Doug Hychek, for the listeners, he created that show Monster Quest. Pretty famous show.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. And so Doug was telling me that he saw the Minnesota Iceman growing up. Doug is from Minnesota, so, it was right there. And according to him, as a child, even back then, he thought it was fake.
What year did he see it?
From what he describes, I think 1968. So not after the supposed replacement, but we'll get into that. 1968. He thought it was fake the whole time. There's a story that I want to share later that takes place in 1974 with Doug and the Minnesota Iceman. But he was talking about that very thing, that if it was rubber, if it was latex, there wouldn't be a smell unless Hansen lived on a farm. Hansen might have owned livestock. He might have filled it like to get the gore factor, to get real blood, like pig's blood, using a pig's eye to have it hanging out, to put like pig entrails in it. And that might have been what caused the smell.
All right.
Was like
Gross.
Actual rotting organs. Yes.
Well, there's the either the point of it, we'll get into it, but it could have been a latex model filled with pig guts, or it really could have been a real life hominid ape that was shot in 5 possible places, put on ice, and then it was just for 18 months taken up and down countrysides of America in ice with heat lamps over it for 6 to 12 hours a day as people paid $3 to go see this dead, rotting, defrosting corpse in a tiny trailer.
Well, one theory that we can kind of dispel right off the bat is the idea that it was found frozen. I think that can be dispelled pretty easily. And Heuvelmans points this out. And when he brings up the example of an ice cube, it all makes sense. He points out the presence of air bubbles in the block of ice that the Minnesota Iceman is. And if something is freezing naturally out in the wilderness, those air bubbles won't form because the point of freezing starts on the inside and works outward. Whereas if you freeze like a glass of water or you're making ice cubes, the ice forms around the edges first, trapping in air. So then you get air bubbles on the inside because they're unable to escape through the ice. So the very presence of air bubbles disproves that it was found in a block of ice somewhere, that it was frozen artificially.
Unless it was found in a frozen block of ice, thawed out, and then refrozen for transport.
I guess that's also possible.
Just like a Stouffer's lasagna. They found the block of ice, let it defrost for a bit, and refroze it.
Yeah. So Heuvelmans and Sanderson were able to examine and study the specimen for 3 days. Heuvelmans clocked 11 hours total looking at this thing. And he was able to take lots of photos, both in black and white and in color. But he wasn't able to take a singular photo that showed the entire body from above due to the low ceiling of the trailer. And he also didn't want to use a wide lens because then that would have distorted the proportions. So the image that you see on the cover of this book and a lot of the images that you'll find on Google of this is actually 4 different photos put together to give you the complete image.
That's kind of nuts.
Mm-hmm. So I took some other notes too about more descriptions because like I said, there's like pages and pages talking about what all's going on with this dude, but
Dude.
basically not a Sasquatch, right? We haven't said Bigfoot, we haven't said Sasquatch. That's not really part of the debate with this one, but the feet on the specimen were the average length for a regular man, but 50% wider.
Right. Well, this is what I'm going to say. I'm no Sasquatch expert here, but 6 feet tall, roughly, that's within Sasquatch range. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's 6 feet tall, but it's bigger than a person. It's thicker. It's more muscular than a person, which
Very
also
barrel chested.
which is why I believe personally that people overestimate how tall Sasquatches are. First of all, we're not reliable. They've tried to do scientific tests. People cannot accurately guesstimate heights of things at all. Like it's wildly different. So you're seeing something that's 6 feet tall, like Patty from the Patterson Gimlin film was reportedly like 6.5 feet tall by most analysis of the film. It's 6.5 feet tall. But that thing, when you blow it up, like at Cliff Barrickman's museum, it's blown up to 6.5 feet tall, and that thing is a lot bigger than a person, but it's just thicker.
Mm-hmm.
So the wide feet thing, that's a common trait of Sasquatch footprints. About 10 inches by 5 inches wide, which is a pretty thick foot.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's also within the Sasquatch range
Mm-hmm.
to me. But I'm not saying this thing is a Sasquatch
For sure.
because
Right.
it's also missing the sagittal crest.
Which Cullen claimed on the phone it had.
Yes. So for the people, the sagittal crest is that if you're looking at a gorilla, let's say, the head points up. It's got the little pokey head.
Yeah.
That's called the sagittal crest.
Think of like King Kong. He's got that kind of pointy crown head.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think later in the book, I think in the afterword written by Lauren Coleman, he mentions having talked to Cullen. And I think Cullen, he said something about like, well, I never said it had a sagittal crest or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember.
Awesome.
Let me look for it.
I said it had a lactoral chest. It was very wide. They misheard me on the phone back in the 60s.
Yeah. Here's a fun fact about the sagittal crest I learned in a physical anthropology class. What that does is it gives you more power for your jaw. Bite force is what it does. Because you can feel it if you feel just in front of your ears and clench your jaw. There's that muscle that runs all the way up. It runs all the way up and connects to the top of your skull. And if you can feel it, there's actually a little bump on the top of your head. And that is where the sagittal crest goes, right down the middle of your head. There's the highest point of your head is where that muscle connects. So the bigger that part is, the bigger that muscle can be and the stronger bite force you'll have.
Yeah. Have you seen gorilla jaws? They're friggin' huge.
Yeah.
So Lauren Coleman did, as I said, write the afterword for this book translation. And he says, by a strange coincidence in January 2016, I met Terry Cullen for the first time at the International Cryptozoology Conference in St. Augustine, Florida. Cullen confirmed to me that he too felt the real body was switched for a model during the spring of 1969, which we can talk about more later. He subsequently told me that, contrary to Heuvelmans' statement, he denies having seen the back of the specimen's head, saying only that the head seemed to have a sagittal crest when he viewed through the relatively clear, thin ice that covered the creature in his early viewings. But some other important notes about this specimen: the thumb appeared to have reduced opposability. Basically endowed with the lower extremities adapted to gathering grasses or leafy branches or to pull out roots and bulbs. It is not the foot of a savanna runner, that like of Homo sapiens, nor that of a tree climber as that of apes, but rather the foot of a rock climber, a mountaineer. It also had an enormous face and straight and wide mouth, but no lips. So in summary, the creature presented a curious mixture of human and simian characteristics.
Might be the missing link.
What? Oh, that's how it was marketed. For a
The
little
missing link on ice. Come take a look at it. Smell it. Tell your friends.
smell it.
Smell the history.
It's a complete sensory experience. Scratch and sniff history.
Yeah.
Sniff.
That's
Good
an
man.
That story of Iverson like looking over it and like breaking the glass, like, oh, my bad.
Iverson. I love it. While Sanderson and Heuvelmans are at Hanson's place examining the body, Hanson claims that he talked to Mr. X, aka Jimmy Stewart.
It really is a wonderful life.
And Mr. X is upset that he's allowing anyone to even look at the body that closely. So, going forward, there would be no scientific analysis whatsoever. And Hansen told Sanderson and Heuvelmans that, and they immediately began scheming on how they could get him to change his mind on that.
I'm telling you, this is like a buddy cop film.
Dude,
Legit. This book says who's Heuvelmans is bad cop and Sanderson is good cop.
because this is what they were going to work together to try to get Hansen to allow scientific analysis. And Heuvelmans, he was going to go to Central America, do some studies on animals down there, and then go back home to Europe. And so anything that influenced Hansen negatively, he told Sanderson, you can just blame it on me, since I'll just be the evil European dude, and you can be the good cop and be friends with Hansen through and through, even though Sanderson and Heuvelmans are working together. So
it's like a Shakespeare plot, the scheming too.
oh, and then this gets into so Sanderson and Heuvelmans go back to New Jersey, and they work on their little write-ups about what they observed. And they both agree that they need to give this thing a name. And so Ivan Sanderson is like, we'll call the thing Bozo.
Yeah.
What? And Heuvelmans was not a fan of that because he felt like they needed to come up with a name that was going to help it be taken seriously. Sanderson's contribution was Bozo.
And I can imagine Heuvelman just being like, Bozo? Je ne sais quoi Bozo?
But they ended up deciding on calling it, Heuvelmans ended up calling it Homo pongoids.
Mm-hmm.
Pongoides, depending on your
Pongoides.
preference of pronunciation.
Pongoides.
Homo pongoides.
The Iceman had his pongoides hanging out.
His pongoides nuts.
Which there's a lot of artist renditions with this thing's pongoides hanging out.
Yeah. So there's like two sort of routes that we can go here for the conversation. We can continue the like chronological layout of events and all of the mysteries and conspiracies that unfold, and then we can finish up with hypotheses and things like that. Or do you want to talk about the hypotheses and how the science unfolds? Which first, guys?
Ooh, I think we need to get into hypotheses.
Do we?
Or we get into the drama of Napier and all that stuff.
All right. Stick around for the drama, guys. There's tea. There's stuff that happens. But let's get science-y. And actually, science-y, let me tell you, I'm going to be honest. There are a couple chapters in this book that are super science-y, super historical. Lots of large words that take me a second to pronounce. And the problem with that is that when I read things silently, like just reading, my eyes just skip over the long words. I'm like, I can't say that. I don't know what that says. So a couple chapters of this did give me a headache, but it is actually a very informative book, because aside from this entire story, Heuvelmans does do a good job of giving you background information for the science that he's discussing. So even though it's a lot to absorb, and I sort of like dismissed and like breezed over a lot of it for the sake of our conversation, I also have said that I understand now how some people can spend their entire lives researching one subject and talking about one subject, because there's no way that we're going to be able to talk about every element of the story in this one podcast.
Challenge accepted. Here we go, everybody. We're listing off the words.
Here we go.
We're talking pungoides.
So the hypotheses, there's 6 of them.
Whoa.
What do you think they are, Alex? What are the hypotheses that you know of?
Let's see.
Red fish, blue fish.
Red fish, blue fish, green fish, 2 fish. So we talked about it could have been discovered in China, right? We're talking about the hypothesis. Is it the origin stories? Or
not so much the origin story, but more so what it actually is.
Okay. One of the hypotheses is it's possibly a missing link.
Mm-hmm.
A half man, half ape. Could be more of like a straight up frozen Neanderthal.
Mm-hmm.
Homo sphyngoides. There's the one hypotenuse. I don't know. I guess I'll throw it out now. It deals with Frank de Hansen himself. He was a military man. He left the force in '65 as a captain. I think he served in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a chance that he himself was, over there listening to, the sound of napalm, the smell of napalm in the morning. And he shot a rock ape.
Yeah.
And brought it over back to the US of A.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's 3. What are the other 3?
So the 6 that Heuvelmans lays out in the book are: it could be fake, it could be
yeah. Thanks Heuvelman. The great list.
Hey, just for sake of clarity,
I think it could be bullshit. I think it could be a rubber puppet.
He said, well, these aren't necessarily what he believes. These are just the 6 hypotheses that sort of exist. 1, it's fake. 2, it's an ordinary human guy who's just really hairy.
Some hairy guy they put on ice.
3, some kind of monster. 4, a hybrid. 5, what he calls a fossil man. And 6, an unknown man.
Yeah. This is my new superhero team, Fossil Man and Unknown Man.
And his personal belief was that it was number 6, an unknown man, meaning a species of human that had yet to be discovered. Because like a fossil man would be like, oh, we know about this specific breed of human. That's not what this is. This is something that has yet to be discovered, because it differs so much from the humans that we've known to exist in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So his belief was number 6, that it was an unknown man. So he believed it was a creature of the here and now, but perhaps not a member of one of the known races of humanity. So since the specimen had been discovered near the Bering Strait, according to the story, one could be led to believe it was a person of the Ainus, who are reputed to be extremely hairy. But that's also not a good enough point, because they're not that hairy.
No, that idea might be a little racist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, but it's okay though.
We're just communicating the information that comes from the book.
Yes.
But even Heuvelmans himself said, nah, dude, that's not good enough.
Yeah. It is funny to think that it's like, oh yeah, so it could be, missing link. It could be a Neanderthal. It could just be just a random hairy man that was shot and put on display, which raises so many questions about Hansen's moral, and the law was after him too. At certain points they were talking about. Oh, yeah. It's like, hey, you can't just be showing a dead body off for 35 cents.
Dude, you want to talk about morals too. The hybrid hypothesis, it's not completely illogical to think that it could happen, being the union of a human man and a female ape, or an ape and a woman. And apparently attempts at hybridization had been carried out, but unsuccessful. But
That
the
was one of Stalin's big projects back in the day.
Yep.
wasn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, back in the 40s, 50s, Stalin was like, we take a Russian man, we take a monkey woman, we mash them together, and we get the ultimate hybrid monkey man who pledges allegiance to Soviet Russia. Just imagine a bunch of monkeys walking down.
Well, I wanted to tell you, Alex, you'll probably find this interesting because there was rumors of that happening, but I guess rumors even stretching further back than that, and like actual like evidence in the 1920s that it was going on, which I think is pre-Stalin, but
yeah.
So 1920s, there was a doctor in Soviet Russia who was supposedly successful at creating human-ape hybrids, and that they aged rapidly. They're about 6 feet tall, hairy all over. They possess more strength than humans. And so it was supposedly a secret, yada, yada, yada. And Heuvelmans thought that might be just anti-Soviet propaganda. But what's interesting about it is that he notes that the fact that they age faster than humans would fit with how apes mature, because apes reach adulthood a lot faster than humans do. And also apes on average are a lot stronger than humans. So that's interesting. Oh yeah, and they kept them as slaves and they had them work in mines.
When they paid them in bananas.
Probably.
You know, it's that primal urge to return back to being a monkey. More power, more fur. You pick up a bone or the jawbone of an animal and you beat a bunch of dinosaurs to death with it, like a real monkey man. Ooh, yeah. Ooh.
So to sum up Heuvelmans' hypothesis, which he goes into great detail about in this book, but here's just one sort of little paragraph that I think best sums up what he thinks about the specimen. So he says, in the hairy man preserved by Hansen, we finally find ourselves faced with a complete specimen of a hominid presenting both human and simian characters. It was certainly neither an anthropoid ape nor a modern human. For lack of other options, it was a creature to be classified among the three so-called intermediate categories. And these are the words that I can't say very well, but it's Australopithecus, Pithecanthropus, or Neanderthal. Most of the anatomical characteristics of Hansen's hairy man fit with what we know of classical Neanderthals. The only feature of the specimen that did not seem to fit with the preliminary identification was its stature. If Hansen's specimen was a Neanderthal, it was a later one, a member of a lineage that had continued to evolve over 50,000 years.
Right. It should be noted, in case our listeners are not aware, Neanderthals are no longer around. Despite what anyone you don't like, what they might look like, they are not, in fact, a Neanderthal. Okay?
Yeah, because Neanderthals and Homo sapiens are two different things, right?
Homos. Yeah, we're both homos. Homo sapiens. And what? Jasmine's shaking her head because she thinks, I don't know what she thinks, actually, but these are scientific terms, Jasmine.
I know.
Listen, we stand up tall, we stand up proud, and we say the world, in science, we trust Homo erectus.
That aside, Homo means man, so we have Homo sapiens, wise man, and then Homo Neanderthal, which I actually don't know what Neanderthal translates to, but we're homos. And then there's Homo pongoides nuts.
Pongoides.
Which is the specimen in question.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you, this buddy cop writes itself of two shirtless cryptozoologists, Heuvelmans, Sanderson, getting up in front of a press conference shirtless, talking about, we got the Homo pongoides out here, fellas.
Dude, add on top of that, one's English, one's French. So.
Je ne sais quoi, pongoides?
You know what? This is a Coen Brothers movie, and it could be called like Magic in New Jersey or something like that.
Yeah. I'd want Jeff Bridges and John Goodman to be Heuvelman and Sanderson. You're over the line, Sanderson.
Perfect, actually.
So they make their hypotheses. They write their little papers.
Mm-hmm.
Sanderson and Heuvelmans wanted to buy the specimen so that it could be further studied and x-rayed, but Hansen refused. So like Sanderson, I think, tried to like raise the funds or something like that, but in the end Hansen refused, and also eluded simple questions about the specimen's history, changing its origin story and saying all the decisions had to be made by Mr. X, who eventually said he would not ever sell it for any amount. So this is where they devised the plan to try. This is where good cop, bad cop came in. Because they were going to try to just straight up buy it off of him, but he wasn't going to do that. So that's when they devised the good cop, bad cop plan. Because, yeah, you kind of explained it already, but I don't remember exactly what you said, Eli. But Sanderson was in favor of strong measures, believing that the issue could be settled by the power of money or by that of police, which would make you think that he would be the bad cop, but he's not. Heuvelmans had more confidence in wile and diplomacy. So the agreement... Okay, go ahead.
No, you finish.
No, you go ahead, because you seem to be upset with a direct quote from Heuvelmans.
Yes, I do. Because Sanderson was going about it the correct way, in my opinion. He was like, we need to buy this thing, or we need to convince the government to confiscate this thing because it's an important scientific discovery. Heuvelmans was like, oh no, that's too bold. What we need to do is to convince the scientific community that it's important, and that will somehow convince the American government. No, this makes no sense. He clearly did not know America either now or back then. We don't care about science. We just don't care. Like, I'm telling you, the people of that era were not reading Belgian scientific literature and being like, oh, there's this thing in Minnesota that could potentially be a proof of a living Neanderthal. We need to get our hands on that immediately. People are going around back then in the United States, especially in a place like Minnesota, and going, I didn't come from no monkey.
Oh, that's a hairy man on ice, don't you know?
King Kong's not my grandpa. You know?
Well, another thing that Heuvelmans alludes to in the book is that he doesn't like melodrama, and that he's not about the exaggerated stories of all of these people. And I'm like, do you?
I don't know.
I'm getting the vibe that you kind of are having a fun time with this.
Dude, Heuvelmans is melodramatic himself.
That's what I'm saying, and he's also really sassy, but I kind of love it. Like, unrelated to the current conversation, except for the fact that he's a sassy man, but he's got a whole paragraph in one of the early chapters talking about how men and man are foolish just in general, and then finishes that paragraph by saying man is not even capable of using wisely what constitutes his main claim to glory, which is intelligence. Which is intelligence is something I added. He talks about intelligence in that paragraph and then says that line, man is not even capable of using wisely what constitutes his main claim to glory. He's a sassy man.
Yeah, a sassy Frenchman.
So anyway,
Heuvelmans submits his little paper. What is it?
Professor André Capart, the director of the Institut Royal des Sciences Naturelles de Belgique, maybe? Something like that?
Yeah, it's probably the Royal Institute of Natural Sciences of Belgium.
Yes.
But it's all in French.
Correct.
He submits it to there. They approve it within a month, which is, Heuvelmans says, is very impressive. And from what I understand, that is incredibly impressive that anyone would agree to publish a scientific article in a month. But he asks them to delay the publishing of it, till past March 10th.
Which is interesting at first, because the whole purpose of his article was to explain the urgency of this situation, because he was concerned with the decomposition of the specimen. So on one hand, he's like rushing them and being like, this needs to get out there. And then they're like, all right, bet. And then he's like, wait.
Well, because he wanted, this is where I was confused for a while, because he wanted Sanderson to come out with the story first.
Mm-hmm.
But if you remember...
So that I would... But yeah, go ahead.
If you remember, Sanderson made that promise not to publish anything about it.
Right.
So he actually calls up Hansen. Hansen comes out to New Jersey.
Mhm.
They're both shirtless. They're both hanging out.
Comes out to New Jersey to see Sanderson, right?
Yeah, comes out to New Jersey to see Sanderson. They're talking, and this is where we learned some more interesting information, according to Heuvelmans' account, was that Hansen comes out, right, and says that he made up the stories about the Soviet trawler and the Japanese whalers, that none of that was true, but he had heard about it from his flying buddies in the Air Force, and that he went to Hong Kong to see this thing, and he saw it in a cold room, like a meat locker, and it was stored in a plastic bag. He offered to buy it, but the merchant who was holding it offered a price, and he was like, oh, I can't afford that. So he goes back to the United States to find Mr. X, Jimmy Stewart, and then who gives him the money to purchase it and then bring it back to the United States. And then Sanderson's like, hey, guess what? And Hansen's like, what? Sanderson's like, Heuvelmans is going to publish a paper on this. Hansen gets upset and decides, you know what, Sanderson, you can publish something on it too. I don't care anymore. So then Sanderson is going to publish it in his own magazine, Argosy. And because he didn't want to override one of his own stories about tracks being found, like Bigfoot tracks being found, he pushes it into the May issue of Argosy of 1969. And Heuvelmans' paper, despite what he wanted it to do, which was come out after Sanderson's, comes out a month before Sanderson's article in Argosy. And Sanderson gets upset, saying that Heuvelmans purposefully thwarted his efforts to obtain the body for scientific examination. Drama.
Big drama. Damn.
But even more drama unfolds because the Smithsonian gets involved.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because Heuvelmans translates his paper into English and sends it to the leader of the primate biology program at the Smithsonian Institute, was Dr. John Napier, who is also a Bigfoot researcher. Where do we go from there? You lead the way.
So the Smithsonian gets involved because of these articles, and they assemble a whole team of specialists who want to perform an autopsy and detailed examination of this thing. And Hansen hears about it because, again, these articles are being published, and it's not exactly public knowledge yet. At first, it was all just in the science world, but Hansen had ears on all of it, and so he found out about the Smithsonian wanting to get involved, and so he pulls the corpse from viewings. He says, all right, we're done. Nope, we're not doing this. I'm mad. The owner's mad. I said I didn't want publicity. I said I didn't want an examination. And so he's like, you know what? No, we're done. And now he starts displaying what he claims is a replica. And now the media takes interest because, like I said, originally the scientific articles were only available to scientists, but the Smithsonian had written to Hansen asking for him to allow them to examine the specimen. And then he said that the owner has it now. And he added that they created an illusion show that would look very much like the specimen photographed by Heuvelmans, but couldn't be sure if the original exhibit would ever be shown to the public again. Yeah. So he's like, we're taking away the original, but you know what? We'll make a fake one. We'll make a fake one and we'll keep touring it around. It's going to look just like the original one. Don't worry, guys.
Yeah. Here's the thing. So Hansen pulls back at the end of March 25th is when he comes out and says, we're not doing this anymore. Then he goes on vacation until May 5th when he says, we're going to come back and we're going to show a fake one this time. Mm-hmm. By that point, the Smithsonian no longer wanted to be involved, so they pull out officially. They come out with a public statement.
But before they even did that, they tried to get the FBI involved.
Oh, that's true. They did try to get the FBI involved, and the FBI could not do anything because there was no evidence of a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the other dumb thing that Heuvelmans, as smart as he is, clearly does not understand people. Because he was like, oh, well, this thing's Homo pongoides. Homo means man, therefore it's a man. Therefore, Hansen could be in big trouble for murdering a man.
Mm-hmm.
No regular person in the late 1960s in the Midwestern United States would take one look at that thing and be like, oh, that's a person. No one would do that. No authority would look at that and be like, oh, this guy killed a person. It
But
looks
they'd do
like
that later. They'd do
Huh?
that later. They would do that later when he gets stopped at the border of Canada.
Yeah, but what Heuvelmans is saying about Hansen being worried about having committed murder or anything like that, I mean, maybe he personally might have felt that way, but I really don't think he would have been in any legal trouble for doing that. Like say for instance, there's stories of people like hunters getting a Sasquatch in their scopes and being unable to pull the trigger because it looks so much like a human. But if someone came in with the corpse of a Bigfoot, I don't think anyone would arrest them because, oh, you killed a person, no matter what the scientific classification is, because it's clearly not a person, you know?
Who knows? Maybe that's when we get the new spin-off of Law and Order, Sasquatch Victims Unit. They're out there fighting for the rights of those who have none, the Sasquatches.
So the FBI can't do anything, and then Hansen is like, "Oh, we're displaying a replica now. Like this is the replica." And so the Smithsonian dismissed their interest, basically saying they were convinced, not basically saying, literally saying, this is a quote. The Smithsonian is convinced that this creature is nothing but a fairground fabrication made of foam, rubber, and hair, and it even claimed that the original model and the alleged current substitute were one and the same. So Hansen's saying, oh, I've got a new replica here. And the Smithsonian's like, nah, it's probably the same thing, and it's fake, so it's fine.
Here's the new Iceman. It's the same as the old.
Well, Heuvelmans thought the same thing, that the new and the old were one and the same.
But
and
that
that
was real.
Because Heuvelmans believed that, because it was in a different position than it was before.
Mm-hmm.
Not extremely different, but similar enough. But now you could see teeth in it. And he thinks that all Hansen did was thaw it out, move it a little bit, and then refreeze it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, must have smelled even worse.
I know. Goodness.
This thing's been thawed out like so many times.
So some of you may be asking, why would Hansen do that? Why would Hansen say any of this, do any of this, re-show the corpse, whatever? This is what Heuvelmans thinks. He wrote, rather than trying to hide or dispose of a bothersome corpse, never an amusing and often a disgusting task, why not simply exhibit it to the public with much publicity and hoopla? What an admirable application to the principle expounded by, is it Dupin in Poe's The Purloined Letter? One cannot see what is hiding in plain sight. What genius is the art of crime? What a novelty for a hoaxer to present the real item as false.
It was all a conspiracy.
Basically, yeah. I mean, it is pretty smart if that's what he did, right? Well, let's examine what happened. I feel like we need to distill down what happened. Basically, Sanderson and Heuvelmans looked at the body. They thought it was real. They start generating a bunch of publicity. Hansen's like, nah, I don't want this. He pulls out, disappears for a month, reappears, claiming that it's fake now, that what he's showing is a fake of the real thing. And people take one look at it and they say, oh yeah, it's fake. But if it was real and he thought it out and changed its position, refroze it and said, hey, it's fake, if you're telling people that it's fake before they even look at it, they're probably going to look at it and think, oh yeah, it's fake. It's genius.
It's the perfect crime. That's how he beat the murder rap.
You want to talk about crime? It's gonna get even crazier, Alex. Because when you think about the theories, do you know any of this? Do you know about this?
It was all grand larceny. I have no idea.
So before I get to the crime, more sketchy stuff happens because, as I mentioned earlier, he gets stopped at the border of Canada because now he's touring what he claims to be a replica around the fairgrounds and the carnivals and things like that. And he's about to cross the Canadian border. And while trying to come back to the States, Customs stops him and refuses to let him bring his trailer into the US because if there was even a question that he was carrying a humanoid creature or a real person, some type of dead body, then he needed permission from the US Surgeon General to transport it. And so he insisted that it was fabricated, told them it's not real, it's rubber and hair, like it's not real. And so they were like, okay, prove it. And so they wanted to take a sample, but he didn't let them do that because he was like, oh, it's going to ruin the exhibit if you try and do that. And then he also wouldn't allow them to take x-rays, saying that the owner, Mr. X, would never allow it. And so he ends up calling Mr. X and the lawyers and being like, I need to get back into the States. And the lawyers did their job because eventually Customs had to release him and he was allowed back into the States without having any type of examination done on the specimen. But then you're like, okay, if it's fake, why wouldn't he let them do the things?
Right?
Don't touch it. Stay away.
And so then he starts advertising it as the missing link, the only Homo pongoides in the world, a specimen which amazed millions of people and puzzled the entire scientific world. That's the new headline on this exhibit that's touring.
He's rubbing it in their faces. Like, it's wild.
Mm-hmm. And it
Even,
gets even
even
more
through a
wild.
little shade, had it be called it's a wonderful specimen.
It's a wonderful specimen.
So then it gets even crazier because he comes out and he's like, yo, my 3-year contract is about to expire. And you know what? The owner of the specimen has finally decided to submit it to a thorough scientific analysis, which is going to take place in a laboratory that we will set up, and only a few anthropologists will be invited to assist us. So now he's like, yeah, guys, come check it out. It's real. What?
My 3-year contract is up with loading this frozen corpse around. So who wants it next?
Now, Alex, I have a question for you. Did you come across the article that Hansen wrote about the creature?
Is it where he talks about shooting it?
Yes. Tell us about
I got
that.
a little bit of that, yeah. Where did he say he was at when he shot it?
Whiteface Reservoir in Minnesota.
Okay, yeah. So now he says he actually was in Minnesota. He was hunting, walking around doing his thing. And out in the clearing, he sees 3 vaguely humanoid, hairy creatures looking at him. And before he can even figure out what they are, one of them just gets mad, turns around, starts snarling, howling, screaming at him. And he's in a daze. His life flashes before his eyes. He doesn't even know what he's doing. But next thing you know, he's got the gun cocked and loaded. He closes his eyes, plausible deniability on his part, and says he doesn't remember shooting the thing straight in the face. It just blows the hell out of it. One of its eyes goes flying out of its socket. The other one implodes inwards. Blood just starts shooting out of the damn thing as it falls over dead in a bloody heap. And before he even knows what happened, the other 2 scurried off into the night. And all he was left was with this dead, homeless Pongoides at his feet.
Mm-hmm.
The Pongoides still hanging out of it.
Yeah. So all this time he's like, oh, I got it in Hong Kong. Oh, someone else owns it. Oh, it was in the sea. Oh, whatever. And then he's finally like, I shot it. It's real. It was me all along. But all the details in the story just raise more questions because apparently he didn't come back until, what was it, a month later to get the body? You don't believe it? Oh, no. You said a month later.
Yeah, a month later.
Yeah.
And then he stores it in his freezer at home.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it? His wife didn't know about it, or?
No, his wife helped him move it down there.
Oh, that's right. He convinces his wife to keep this frozen monkey down there. And
honey, I'm home, and you'll never guess what I brought home for dinner.
Yeah. And they didn't do anything with it, apparently. This is all supposedly based off of the article. They didn't do anything with it for 4 whole years, and they just kept it in their freezer.
Yeah, because according to the article, that whole incident occurred in 1960. So they did nothing with him for 4 years, and then they moved, right?
Maybe. I didn't write every chronological detail of this story down. My biggest point was that he keeps this thing for however long, and he's got a lawyer who apparently is the one that suggests getting a fake made to present in case he were questioned of murder. And so he claims that he actually did show a model for the first year, starting in 1967 when he was going on tour with this thing around the fairs.
Well, I also want to add to the point of having the fake made if he was questioned for murder or whatever. The purpose of the fake was just to provide documentation that he had it made.
Yeah, like to
That's
show photos of the process of it being made and be like, no, see, look, here's a picture of it getting made. It's not real.
Yeah, essentially. I don't know if I believe that. Although I do believe fakes were made.
Yeah, but then it's also interesting because there's not ever a mention of Mr. X in any sort of manner in this article. Like, no buying, which obviously there wouldn't be a need for because he didn't buy it. He shot it in the woods.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, like, there's no other real owner that he's been talking about this whole time.
So much work.
Yeah,
Dude,
but
it's
So much work to keep up. Like, here I'm a retired captain from the military, and I got this fake made, but I also have this real one. Oh, where did you get it? Oh, I got it from China, and I bought it with Mr. X. Well, actually, no, they found it in the Bering Strait. But then it's like I had so much work. This guy was taking his retirements really game strong.
well, the most interesting part of this article is how he ends it. And he ends it by saying, in the meantime, I will continue to exhibit a hairy specimen that I have publicly acknowledged to be a fabricated illusion and leave the final judgment to the viewers. If one should detect a rotting odor coming from a corner of the coffin, it is only your imagination. A new seal has been placed under the glass and the coffin is airtight. I just read the wrong thing. That's not what I was trying to read.
Yeah, I was like, huh.
That's the wrong. That is how he ends the article. But what's most important in the article is what he says a little bit earlier, which is, during the past few months, I've been pressed for the conditions or circumstances under which I would consider giving the specimen up for scientific evaluation. 2 conditions must be met before I would even consider such an action. 1, a statement of complete amnesty for any possible violation of federal laws. And 2, a statement of complete amnesty for any possible violation of state and local laws where the specimen was transported or exhibited during the 1968 fair season. And then he goes, oh, people will be sure that it's a fake thing. Maybe it is. So he's like,
Keeping it close to the chest.
well, he's like, hey, it could be fake. But then he's also like, but if you want to see it, you have to promise that I'm not going to get thrown in jail. So it's like, if it's fake, why would you be thrown in jail?
He was using it to smuggle drugs.
Turns out, oh, dude. Before we get into the drugs, because drugs are involved, his request for amnesty is completely ignored. Like no one cares.
Just like Heuvelmans' call, scientific community, if you can all just donate $1, 1,000,000 of you can donate $1, we can buy the rights to the Iceman. It's our duty. It's our. Nobody showed up.
Everyone's like, all right. But that article appears in the July 1970 edition of Saga magazine, which is another paper that Sanderson was the editor for. And Heuvelmans points out that the melodramaticness of the article, the way it's written, bears hallmarks of Sanderson's own writing, which I kind of agree with. The detail that stuck out with me was that after he shot the Iceman in the face, he runs and then falls and then rises and then falls again. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's a little dramatic. And once Heuvelmans says, oh, I feel like Sanderson had a hand in writing this, which apparently was confirmed later, that Sanderson rewrote large portions of Hanson's story, which now everything is all jumbled up because Sanderson's helping to perpetuate a not entirely true story for the purpose of hopefully examining the body, getting amnesty for him from the US government for whatever crimes that he might have committed, which all fall flat. Boy, it's a Coen Brothers movie. It really is. It's bizarre. But anyways, I just wanted to add all that in, that the boy Ivan Sanderson, that hurt me a little bit. I was like, why'd you do that?
Yeah.
A little bit of a heel turn.
Yeah. So nobody takes Hansen up on the offer for amnesty, but some people do take interest in the article and make attempts to fact check what he has. One of those people being a man by the name of Frosty Johnson, who was at a barbershop one day when he came across Saga magazine and read this article by Hansen. And so he actually freaking launched an expedition. He took people out there. He went to Whiteface Reservoir. He went out to look for these other things because, you know, the story said that there were 2 others involved in this incident. And so if there's 2 others, there's probably more than 2 others out there. So they went out and started looking around. But they didn't find any tracks. They didn't come across any creatures. And nobody in the area had heard of anything like that. No stories of Bigfoot-like creatures, monkey-like creatures, gorilla ape men in the wilderness. No one in the area had ever heard any story about wild and hairy men, not the vaguest rumor or legend. So it was unlikely that Hansen had killed this hairy man in Minnesota.
This really is a Coen Brothers movie, because now it's the Iceman exposed with Frosty Johnson.
It's a great name. Okay, so we've made allusions to drugs in this episode. And you're probably wondering when we were going to talk about the drugs or why drugs are even involved. So there's lots of origin stories for this thing. It's not likely that it was shot in Minnesota. It is more likely that it came from Hong Kong, China, somewhere over there. And the whole amnesty thing makes you wonder, okay, what laws were broken? You know, if Hansen really did get this thing from out of the States and had to somehow smuggle it into the US, how did he do it? Well, there is a theory that it was smuggled into the US in a particular manner, that drugs were smuggled into the US. And that is in the coffins of passed away soldiers from Vietnam. That's a hard period at the end of that sentence. I don't know what I'm supposed to say after that. How is that even a thing? When I was reading this story, I was like, I'm watching Narcos. Like, what is this? Everything involved in the story made me feel like I was watching an episode of Criminal Minds.
So apparently the way it went down was deceased veterans of the Vietnam War were transported back to the United States in coffins on planes. And some of them who had been more brutally destroyed, I should say, were placed in plastic bags that were labeled "Do Not Open," and then placed inside coffins and then transported back to the United States. And obviously the "Do Not Open" was in respect of the body. Mm-hmm. But people began to fill up those plastic bags that said "Do Not Open" with bundles of heroin or opium to transport to the United States. And so it is Heuvelmans' theory that this creature, as I mentioned earlier, when it was first sighted by Hansen, as he told Sanderson back at his New Jersey home, that he first witnessed this thing in a plastic bag. So maybe this thing was transported in a plastic bag labeled "Do Not Open" inside a casket, that Hansen probably flew it over here. And the whole reason, he never accuses Hansen of being in on the heroin trade.
Yeah.
But the only reason Hansen might have thought to do that was because he knew people who did that.
Mm-hmm.
And that he was aware of it. And that the whole reason he didn't want to share where this thing came from was because it might have shown too much light on that illegal heroin smuggling operation.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
It's so wild.
But you know what's even more wild? The fact that the original specimen was never seen again and has disappeared. And the only specimen that you can see is what's believed to be the replica, what is a replica, but potentially the original replica, which is now being housed at the Museum of Weird in Texas because there was a whole eBay auction and
Yeah.
somebody bought it from Hanson's son. And so
Which
that's all we
right,
got.
that's what raises questions too, because it's funny because it's like, oh, it's a replica, but now they're selling remains through eBay.
Yeah.
It was apparently it was sold for $20,000 too.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that's
in
a big chunk of
2013.
change.
Yeah.
Another thing about the replica, I want to return back to the Doug Hychek story.
Yes, yes.
So after the 1970 article, that's where the story kind of ends, right? Like
With Hanson's article.
yeah, after Hanson's article, I mean, nothing really happens after that.
Mm-hmm.
The body didn't go back on display, did it? I think that it was over.
I think it was. I think he kind of became a recluse. No one offered him amnesty. Nobody cared what he was saying, and so he just stopped touring.
So fast forward to 1974. You have a young, dapper Doug Hychek driving around, ends up in Hanson's hometown, right there in Winona, I believe. Winona, with Minnesota, and pulls up. It's an antique place, which also fits with Hanson's profile. And Hychek didn't know it was Hanson at first. He just pulled up to the antique place with his girlfriend. They were checking out stuff. Apparently, Hanson ends up chatting up Hychek's girlfriend to the point where Doug can't even get a word in. So he decides, well, screw it, I'm going to go walk around. And so he walks around and he leaves the main building and sees a barn on the property, enters the barn, and finds in an empty freezer, well, an unplugged freezer, no ice in it, the latex body of the Minnesota Iceman. And it's hollow on the inside, which is where he got the idea that he might have been stuffing it with actual guts. There's no eyeball hanging out, nothing. And Doug said that it looked identical to the one that he saw in 1968, just 6 years prior.
Whoa.
So he thinks that it was fake the entire time, that it was never real.
Really?
And that's his story.
Interesting.
And it wasn't hollow for the pig guts, it was hollow for the heroin.
Yeah.
Goodness.
It is unfortunate the way that it all just kind of fades into obscurity, especially with all main characters of this story having passed away in recent years. Heuvelmans passed away in 2001, Frank Hansen in 2003, and Sanderson passed away not long after this whole event in 1973. But Lauren Coleman, he wrote the afterword for this book and talks about how he saw in 1969 the exhibit and he was certain it was fake. It was the fake. But he also was loaned the replica that's at the Museum of Weird to display in the International Cryptozoology Museum out of the ice. There was no ice block for this one. So yeah. Coleman considers the specimen to be Homo erectus.
There it is.
I don't know how recently. Actually, I do. So it went to the Museum of Weird in 2013. I would assume it's still there because I didn't find any other articles that were more recent than that. So if you want to see the replica of the Minnesota Iceman, you can go to the Museum of Weird in Austin, Texas.
Can I say, for the record, I think Heuvelmans' theory about it being a rock ape, he never uses the term rock ape, but it was an ape from Vietnam that had gotten shot and then transported over to the United States via illegal methods, is the theory that makes the most sense. I do think it was real. I don't.
So then do you think there was a Mr. X involved?
Well, I think what Heuvelmans was insinuating that Mr. X was whoever got Hansen in on that illegal smuggling ring. That
Jimmy Stewart, drug lord.
Drug lord and Yeti smuggler.
was like, Hanson, I'm telling you, bring your wife to Hong Kong. Use her underwear. That's how you're gonna transport this thing.
It's a great idea. You see,
I've already done it. It's foolproof. But it's I just don't I don't see how both Sanderson and Heuvelmans could have looked at this thing for 3 days and came away with the conclusion that it was real if it was like a latex model and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And like I
Well,
feel
I
like
think they also had a falling out after this too. Sanderson and Heuvelmans sort of were done with each other after this whole shenanigan.
oh yeah, all the drama that resulted from it. Oh goodness.
who knows? Maybe the fact of the matter was there's two guys highly respected in their field. They go to take a road trip together, shirtless, of course. They find this frozen monkey man. They're looking at it, examining it for 3 days. The lights above are heating up the leftover heroin that's going into the air, and they're just on a bender for 3 days. Like,
Lord.
This is it. This is the find of the century.
That's crazy.
That's what that stinky smell was. It was just black tar heroin heating up in the lights.
Oh boy.
I can't even express how much more there is to this story that we just simply cannot cover. Like other theories about who Mr. X was, the theories about the replica being made and how it was done so and who made it, and just
said it was a West Coast company, so it could have been Industrial Light and Magic for all we know.
Honestly, this was one of the most exciting episodes that we've done. I feel like for me personally, this was one of the most exciting episodes just because it's wild. Like, it's wild. There's so much weird stuff going on and it's crazy. And we know people who've seen the thing, like the connections that have been made and like the stories that we hear, and it's just like, dang, dude. Dang,
yeah. I guess I've met Lauren and Doug.
And the fact that it's like not that long ago. Like, this was the 60s, the 70s. Like, this is not some ancient story mystery. This is like modern day mystery.
Modern day mythology being built right now.
It's crazy.
Wild. Yeah. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think it was real?
If it was real, I think it's been destroyed at this point.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Buried or incinerated.
I hope it was real, but with just the stories of how many times this thing was thawed, refrozen, thawed out again, stinking up the joint, probably having, it's in the fairgrounds of Minnesota where they're known to deep fry everything. So you got people walking in, 35 cents. Oh, I could pay that. Let me just grab my double fried corn dog and my double fried ice cream. And I spilled some on the ice. Oops, sorry about that. Oh,
I legit thought you were gonna make a joke about like the original getting deep fried and sold at the fair.
Oh, hey, who knows? Hanson, what'd you do with the body? Where is it? Those deep fried corn dogs everyone's been enjoying so much. The secret ingredient is Homo pongoides.
Oh man.
Homo pongoides nuts in the wieners.
All right, that's 3. You don't get to say it anymore. We're closing out the episode. You got 3 of those jokes.
Hey, that was the good last one, but
yeah,
the first one was really good too. I wasn't expecting that.
Good times, good cryptid story, good names involved. Yeah. What else do you need?
I think what we need is for you to tell us where we can find you on social media.
Oh. Hi, I'm Alex Kaiju. You can find me on Instagram, Alex Kaiju. Alex, DAIKAIJU. I draw monsters. I draw comics. I'll probably start drawing pagoides going forward at this point. But enough about me, and moving on to Jasmine May with the one, the only, Ohio's best. Take it away.
Thank you. If you have any interest in following me on social media, you can find me on Instagram. It's my full name, Jasmine May with, JASMINE MAEWITH. And you know something? When did we record our last episode? Did we record our last episode prior to our big announcement?
I think so.
So it hasn't been publicly stated on air that Cryptid Campfire will be in attendance of Monster Fest 2. Guys, Cryptid Campfire is going to Monster Fest 2. We're going to be there live in person. You can meet us. You can talk to us. We're going to do a live podcast session. Maybe, probably. I don't know how any of this works. All I know is I'm going to be there.
Yeah, we'll be asking the hard-hitting questions, just like Barbie. You guys ever think about dying?
Yeah.
Wow. I think about dying and then getting frozen and toured around the country as a fairground exhibit.
Yeah. That's the new Viking funeral.
They'll call me Homo Eli.
Homo what sinis?
All right, Eli, where can people find you on social media if they want to follow your adventures and watch all of your other projects?
You can follow me at the Eli Watson on Instagram. I'm also on the Small Town Monsters YouTube channel doing my own series called Mysteries and Monsters. That's
M&M's for short.
M&M's. CC and M&M's. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. Buy your tickets to Monster Fest 2.
Yeah, it's going to be friggin' awesome, dude.
It's not till next year, so you've got time.
Yeah, it's June 2024. We should say that.
Yeah, so don't blink or you'll miss it.
Dude,
Time's going by too quick.
It's true. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll catch you next month.
Bye.
Boys.